Hey, how y'all doing? This is Daniel Thompson again, um, working on the self-audit portion of this class. I decided to do Central Christian College. We're a small NAIA university that has only about 350, or has only exactly 315 students on campus. Even with the low student body count, Central Christian was able to maintain filling the roster spots for 17 different sports. That includes men's and women's basketball, men's and women's track and field, men's and women's cross country, um, men's and women's golf, men's and women's tennis, men's and women's soccer, and then we have baseball, softball, men's wrestling, and then volleyball and cheerleading. Our number of sports will actually increase over the next couple of years. Next year we are looking to add, or actually next year we are adding men's and women's lacrosse. The following year we're adding women's wrestling, and then in 2019 we're looking at adding men's volleyball. So that's quite a bit of sports for a small, very small NAIA institution, even by NAIA standards. It's pretty good. Um, because it's so small, I thought it would be smart to do prong one, which is effective accommodation and participation opportunities under Title IX. I wanted to do this one because we are such a low-numbered student body count here at Central that I was curious as to how the ratios would turn out to be. So here we go. The key factor that the effective accommodation and participation opportunities, prong one, under Title IX tries to cover is whether or not the number of participating female student athletes comes to an acceptable proportion, which is actually not set under the guidelines of the Title IX, to the number of enrolled females at the college. To answer this question, there are 5 factors that have to be addressed and answered before you can basically answer prong one. The first factor is the percentage of female students at Central Christian. According to the academic office, of our 315 students on campus this year, 141 of them are females. After dividing the number of female students by the number of total students, the first factor is complete, and we get the answer of 44% of our student body is females, are females. Sorry. The second factor to work on is to help answer our proportion clause of Title IX is to find the unduplicated female participation rate. Unduplicated participation rate means how many students participate in at least one sport. Be careful when trying to count all the number of athletes, especially at a small school, because some of these students will be dual, so you don't want to count them twice on this section. According to the female athletic team's rosters, there are 81 girls who participate in one sport, at least one sport, and we find our answer by dividing the female participation number by the total participation number. Produces the answer, which is 39%. The third factor to figure out, the third factor to figure out is the duplicated female participation rate. Duplicated participation rate means that those who participate in more than one sport will be added once for each roster that they are on or the sport that they take place in. At Central Christian College, there are 103 roster spots taken up by females in our athletic program. This means that Central Christian has 22 female athletes who play more than one sport. The total number of roster spots filled in the athletic program, including both men and women, is 240. Dividing the number of roster spots filled in all sports by the roster spots filled by female athletes will give us the answer. answers the duplicated female participation rate, which is 43%. Factor 4 is the unduplicated participation variance. This is found by subtracting the answer to our first factor, which was 44%, by the answer in the second factor, which is 39%. Factor 5, the duplicated participation rate variance, is found by, again, subtracting the answer to factor 1, which was 44%, by the answer, subtracting 1, which is 44%, by the answer to factor 3, which is 43%, which gives us 1%. Our unduplicated participation variance gave us 5%. Although, which is kind of weird, there's no set number under Title IX that actually states what percentage rate would be acceptable to be in compliance with prong 1. Through various court cases, it has been found that 5%, it's hinted at that 5% is usually going to be found in compliance based on the history of those cases. With Central Christian College unduplicated variance rate being 5% and the duplicated rate being at 1%, we would assume that the school would be considered in compliance with Title IX through prong 1. However, there is no guarantee of this. The 5% unduplicated variance rate is still kind of a red flag, also based on court history and case history. It'd be best for Central to work on trying to lower this rate by next year to the best of their ability, trying to get more female athletes in. The 1% is fine. That's actually pretty good, especially considering our small numbers. Some of the problems or issues or difficulties that there were in trying to get these numbers, actually me and our other two coaches who are also in this class, we went to our academic office and tried to find total enrollment, number of female students. Makes it difficult because we weren't sure whether or not to address the tradition, like whether or not to fill out the template for prong 1, whether or not it was just for traditional students, which is students that are on campus and in the undergraduate courses, or whether it included the total student body, which includes online classes, evening classes, adult classes, things like that. Because if you include those numbers into ours, it's about a little over 1,000 to 1,200 students. But I found it best to, since none of those online students or adult class students are actually reaping the benefits of the accommodations and programs that the school provides, then as far as sport-related wise and things like that, for this class, I thought it best to do the traditional students of the students that are here living on campus, which was the 315. So, according to the research that we did, Central is compliant with, or would be considered compliant, where if there was a suit brought to them concerning prong 1. Because it is right at 5%, although it needs to be lower, we would assume that they would be compliant.